Alright, I'm back and we're continuing our free IPA series. So the last time we went through this, you should have been able to get your server set up and your first client set up and installed. And really just connecting those two isn't anything big. But one thing you can do to check is on the server when you come into the web UI, so you log in as admin and then use whatever your password was that you created for that. There's this link here that says hosts, and you just want to click on that. And if you see your client machine listed like we do here, then you know that you've got those machines set up correctly. Now you need both machines potentially running to see this, but you can see here's the server and here's the client. So now you can see the hosts that have connected up through the system, and that happened whenever you did that script that you ran for actually getting the client side installed. So here you can see there's only one user and it's an admin. So today I want to go through setting up a new user, and there's a lot to users that we'll go through. And again, it's just so much that it's hard to put all in one video. But really when you look at just users even, you have active users, stage users, and preserved users. So users that you don't want to lose information about. So when you kind of look at identity, it talks about users, hosts, which are your machines, services, so different services that you can set up to be run and different things that can happen on different machines. The groups, so the way that you group users, so by default this has admin, editor, IPA users, and trust admins. So most people default to IPA users, and the other groups have a few more privileges. And you can go in and edit these, or you can create your own and basically give them their own names, but it's basically how you group users. Then you have ID views, so I haven't really used this one much yet, so I'll learn about that and we'll go through that. And then auto number, or auto member, so user group roles and host group roles. So again, you can kind of set up what people become a member of automatically, or what hosts become, what group hosts become a member of automatically. So that's just under identity. Then you get into policy. So you've got quite a bit of stuff here as well. So host-based access control. So per host, what kind of access control do you want to set up on it? Do you want everyone to be able to access this host, or only certain people, only certain groups of people, that kind of thing? Sudo. So sudo is a really great thing and a really useful thing in a Linux environment. So here you can see that you've got sudo rules, sudo commands, and sudo command groups. So there's a little bit of setup here, but you can actually create a user who doesn't have a lot of privileges, so maybe they can't just go get any app and run it that might require sudo privileges, but you can allow them, because they maybe need to start up a VPN and that requires a sudo password to do that. You can set it up so that they can run the command for starting up their VPN and put in their password as a sudo user, but they still don't have permission to go just install any software that they want. So sudo's kind of an interesting one, and we'll go through that. Again, I need to learn a little bit more about it and kind of get it set up a few times to be able to run you through the process. SE Linux user maps. So again, I'm not real familiar with this one. I'll have to go look it up a little bit more, but this is about security enterprise Linux. So I'll have to kind of check into that one. You've got password policies, which are always important, so it's really a good idea to go through and set up password policies that make sense for your organization, but this is where you can do that. So you can either edit this one, you can create different password policies. Maybe your super admins need a really hard password policy, your users need one that's strong but not quite so difficult, and so on. So it's kind of up to you to kind of figure out how to set that up. And then Kerberos ticket policy. So Kerberos is kind of another authorization system. So I need to learn more about it, but it's another place where you can set up some ticketing and some authorizations as well. Then you get into authentication itself. So again, we've got a lot of sub-tabs here. So you can set up OTP tokens, you can set up a Radius server, you can do certificate identity mapping rules, and so on. And then you've got just certificates in and of themselves. So again, authorization is another one. Or authentication is another one. Network services. So here we start getting into a few other things. So we get into DNS and setting up all the DNS stuff. Again, I'm just doing DNS forwarding straight to my IP, to my Pi-hole. But there could be some things that we want to set up with zones and stuff like that too. So there's quite a bit here. So as you come into the IPA server, you've got role-based access control. So you can see here that we've got roles, privileges, permissions, self-service permissions, and delegations. Then we have ID ranges, realm domains, topology, basically topology of your network and your setup and your hosts and everything. The API browser, so if you want to use some of the API functionalities of FreeIPA, you can do that. And then configuration, just kind of overall. So you've got quite a few things here that you can also set up as far as that goes. So there's a lot built into FreeIPA. I'll say right now, just going back to what I remember of Active Directory, there is not as much, at least in this menu area, as I remember Active Directory having. It has tons and tons and tons more stuff. Now there could be plugins and extensions for FreeIPA that I haven't installed yet. This is a straight out of the box installation, so this is kind of what it looks like. But this is what we want to go through first. So the first thing I want to do is I just want to create a user, and we'll just assign them a regular user role. We're not going to make them an admin or anything like that. So just out of the gate, you have all these buttons over here, and these do exactly what they say. So you would click on Add, and you would give them a user login. So I'm going to make this Brian-MC, and then this will be first name, last name, and class. I don't really know, and it's not really a drop-down list that I can see. So you could make them whatever, just user, I guess. No private group, so I'm not going to check that box. I don't know exactly what that does either. Group ID, so when you create these groups, you can kind of pick like what group do they belong to. So I'm going to make this one an editor, and then it fills in the ID number for them. And then you give them a password that's temporary, so make them a decent password. Let me retype it so that I don't forget what I type. And then they'll have to change this the first time they log in, and you'll see that here in just a minute. So you can do add, and it's just going to take this information, add, and then add another person. So if you're adding multiple people, you could run this one, or add and edit. So I want to show you the edit part. So as you come in, you see there's even more information. So if they have a job title, this could be developer. I don't know, I'm not really a developer, just for an example. So as you move down, you've got more information about the person themselves. Over here, you've got a little bit of kind of like the alias for the person, I guess you'd say. Yeah, is the best way to call it. If you have Kerberos information, you'll put it there. Now here, for your users, a lot of times people want a bash shell. They don't really know what to do with just bin.sh. So bash, you might want to change this to bash, and you might just want to make this a blanket change for the system. You can do that as well in that system config, which we'll go back to later. So bin bash, and then home/Brian Mac. And remember, we set up that stuff where it says mk home dir. That's where this is going to kind of come into play. So any machine I log into will create a space for me that's called that. If they gave you public SSH keys, you could put those in so that they can then log in through SSH, and they don't have to have password authentication potentially. Certificates. So quite a bit of stuff that you can add in for this person. And then it says user authentication types. In this case, we'll do password. Radius, I need to learn a little bit more about. You could turn on two-factor authentication, and then of course PK int kind of authentication, and hardened password. So again, a little bit more stuff here that I'm not as familiar with, but I'll try to learn about so I can help you guys understand as well. And if you're using Radius, you have Radius proxies that you can set up as well. And then your Kerberos ticketing policies, if you've set those up. As you kind of come over here, the password policy, how often should it expire? So this is just based on what you set up in the password policy up at the top in the menu. And then email address, so this is just going to generate the email address. You could change this to an actual email address if you want to have that. It could be their email address if this is more of a company domain that you set up, like mycompany.com, something like that. Telephone number, so kind of some personal information so you can reach these people, to be able to keep track of your employees. And then employee information for their organization. So there's a lot of information in here that you can absolutely go fill in. I'm just going to go ahead and click on Save because I've created my person. Now, again, this is not everything. So you also have user groups, so you can add them to user groups. Then you have network groups, so you can add them to that. You have roles, if you want to create more roles to add them to. So maybe they're HR, maybe they're developer, maybe they're IT administrator, maybe they're your virtual machine administrator, maybe they do all of your CI/CD stuff. You can set up roles for kind of all kinds of people and make different rules about what they can do. I don't know what the HBAC rules are yet, but we'll get that together. And then, like I said, pseudo rules, where you can create different pseudo groups, and rules, you can add pseudo rules to this user so that they have some pseudo privileges if you want them to. The way we've set up this user right now, there will be no pseudo privileges. So now that I've done that, I'm going to go back to my client machine here, and I'm going to hit open so that I can get to the user interface. And I'm going to just expand this out a little bit. And I want to change users, so what I need to first do is actually log in my other user, which was the user I used to make the system. I'm just going to log them out. It's kind of like Windows, except there's no fast user switching. So I actually need to log this person out, and when we come back in, now I can say new, not listed. So when I do that, it's going to ask me for the username, which is Brian MC, and now it wants the password that I created for Brian MC, and it says password expired. So it's asking again for the current password. It wants me to change the password at this point. So PA. Oops, let me get it right. And now it wants a new password. So it says it's creating the directory, and it creates my home directory, and then it brings me to log in. Now I'll tell you, I did this the first time. If you don't set it to create the home directory, you are going to get extremely frustrated with the system not allowing you to log in. It'll act like it's doing something, it won't give you any error message, and then it'll go right back to that login screen. So here you go. The first time we go out, we can just skip this and next and kind of set all this stuff up real quick and be done with it. And then if I go and I open up the terminal, I can do ls, and you can see I'm in Brian Mac and I have a normal home directory. Now I can't do anything with sudo. It will try to let me to see if I actually have permissions to do things with it, but it's going to tell me you're not allowed to do things with sudo because you are not a sudo user for this host. So it kind of limits me to what I can do. I'm just kind of a normal user. I can log in. I can use the applications that are here as long as they don't require sudo passwords. But that's it. So we've created our first user. We've got them set up. We've logged in from our client machine now using the authentication of our server, which is pretty great. So now I'm set up that if I set up more hosts, I can log in with this user on those hosts as long as I don't limit them. So going into the system, I want to show you what you can do with the sudo rules, for example. So we've got the user that I just created, and I'm going to go over here to my virtual machine manager, and I'm going to open up the Ubuntu client that we have there. And we're going to go back to the monitor screen, and I'm going to log in again as this user that we've got from FreeIPA. We'll let that get authenticated and actually log in here. So I changed this to have one CPU with the RAM that it already had, and the reason I'm going to do that is I'm going to create another virtual machine similar to this one and do the same thing and set up the client to show you that you can, once you've set it up on FreeIPA, really everything from the FreeIPA rules comes through. But I wanted to talk about sudo first. So terminal here, I'm going to open this up and I'll make that a little bit larger for you guys. And I just want to show you, like, if I do sudo apt update, it's going to ask for my password because it's the sudo command. And it's going to tell me I'm not allowed to run sudo on this machine. It doesn't matter what I run. If I do sudo wg-quick up, for instance, if I had a WireGuard instance set up and I wanted to use that to connect to a VPN, it's going to be the same thing. It's always going to ask for your password. That's what sudo does, but it's always going to tell you that you're not allowed to run sudo on this machine. So I'm going to close that for a second, and we'll go back to the web UI here. And from the web UI, I can actually go over to the policies. And right here under sudo, we can do a few things. So I'm going to create a sudo command group first. And in here, I'm just going to call this VPN users, which is fine. And I'm just going to do add and edit. And there's really nothing to edit in this case. There's a little bit of settings, but that's really all that there is. So we're good on that one. So now I'm going to go to sudo commands. And I'm going to add the command that I want them to be able to run. So wg-quick, and you can see where I did this before for practice, just to make sure I knew what I was doing. You can give this a little bit more information if you want to give it a description as well. And you could do wg-quick up and wg-quick down, but it's better to set those up as options. So we'll do add and edit again. And oh, leading and trailing spaces. I must have had something in there that was kind of weird. Let's see. Oh yeah, I've got an extra space, so don't put a space in the field whenever you do this. And then now we can do add. And then we can go here and we can click on it to actually edit anything about it that we want to. So the option here is to add it to pseudo command groups, which we just created a pseudo command group. So we'll click on add, and then you check the box, hit the right arrow to move it over, and hit add. And now you can see it's in the pseudo command group. So the last thing to do is the actual rules. So we're going to add a new rule here, and we're going to call this remote users. You can see I had that one before as well. And I'll do add and edit. And in here you've got pseudo order, so I'm just going to put in a number. This could be it has to be an integer, so I'm just going to put in 1. It probably could be anything. Then you can put in a description if you want to. And I'm going to put in pseudo options, so I'm just going to hit add, and I'm going to say page hasn't saved changes. Oh yes, let's save it, then we'll do that. So here's an option up. So WG Quick up is an option. And then we're going to add one more, and down is an option. So I can run WG Quick up and WG Quick down. Now we need to move down, so I want this to be for, you can set this for anyone, so anyone could do this, but let's just say you have only remote users, or you have remote users and users in Office, and you only want the remote users to be able to do this. So the thing that you can do there is basically set up just the users that are remote users. So now you can use user groups, which we don't really have a user group set up for that yet, but if we did, we could add users to that group and then just apply it to the whole group instead of an individual user. In this case, I've got an individual user set up, so I'm just going to add my Brian Mack user here, and we'll do add. And then we're going to go down to accessing which hosts, and you can specify hosts again so that maybe I'm only allowed to do it on one machine or a couple of machines, but you could also say any host, and then you're kind of done. You don't have to go through and add separate hosts. And then they can run what commands, so I want to specify which commands that they can run. So sudo allowed commands, and we'll go and pick this command that we set up here. And this is, so we're setting up a rule basically. And then allowed command groups, so we can also add a command group, which is VPN users, that's fine. And then sudo deny commands, so you can actually also deny commands explicitly, so you can set any and then say except I don't want them to be able to run X, Y, and Z, instead of saying I don't want them to be able to run anything except these things that I set up. And then as who, so again you could say as anyone or specific users and groups. And again I will go and actually set this up as rules users, so add myself. And then down here at the bottom you have run as a group category. The rule applies to specified groups or any groups. So I'm just going to set any groups on this one, and then we will go up and make sure that our changes have all been saved. There we go. So now I should be able to run the WG Quick up command, but I still won't be able to run the apt command if everything went according to plan here. So I'm going to go here and so I have to first have my user, you call your user, hey, I set you up so you can run your VPN updates. You need to turn off your machine or log out and log back in. It could just be log out back in, but I'm going to go ahead and do, well, we'll just do that. Let's just try it. If it fails, then we'll reboot. So I'm going to log out, and then I'll pick my user again, and then I'm going to do my password for my user here and log back in. And it is a little bit slower with only one CPU, but that's okay. It's not terribly slow. And then we'll go up here and we'll go to terminal again, and I'll make this a bit larger for you guys. And sudo, let's just do sudo apt update again. Again, it's going to prompt, and it says I'm not allowed to run sudo. So this is going to have to be rebooted, I'm sure, but let's just do sudo wg quick up. It's going to be the same message, I'm pretty sure, because the message should change to say that you're not allowed to run this particular command. Let's see what happens here. Oh, there we go. I lost my mouse for a second. Something weird's going on. Here we go. I think I put the wrong password. Let's try again. There we go. Yeah, not allowed to run. So we're just going to reboot this machine and then see if that fixes it. So we just do power off and restart. Alright, so we're going to log right back in. It's a funny, weird little blip that it gets where it kind of says, oh, here's what it was, and then it turns off. It's kind of like it keeps an image of some kind. I guess it's streaming an image to you and not actually the desktop somehow. I'm not sure. And let's enlarge that. Sudo apt update and password. Oh, still not allowed to run sudo. Okay, that's interesting. I did not set something up correctly. And it says this incident will be reported. I don't know who it gets reported to. It's probably in a log somewhere. Let's go back to our window here where we can manage and see what I don't have correct. Options. It's for my user. Hosts. Oh, I thought I had set this already. Maybe I messed up and didn't add this. But for the host, we need to add what host we want. So it's any host. That's probably the piece that I forgot. Alright, once we've set the host, we're going to save this, and now I'm going to go boot up my machine again, and we will get right back on it here. So turn it on here, and then we'll just open it up and let it boot. And then we'll go to the terminal here, and enlarge that guy a bit. Sudo apt update. There we go. So now we get this message that says, hey, you're not allowed to run this actual command as root on this machine, which is kind of a cool message, right? But I can do wg quick up. Now it's not going to work because I don't have WireGuard installed, but it's going to say, oh, the command's not found. It's not saying, hey, I couldn't run the command. It's just saying I couldn't find it. So it tried to actually run that command, which is kind of cool. So now I've set a couple of things up for the user, and I've set up this host or any host so that when I log in as a user, I can connect through the VPN if I need to. Now, of course, saying that I have the VPN set up in the first place. So I think that's pretty cool. So that's user setup inside of FreeIPA. Now, there's a lot more to go through, and I want to do that. I'm going to try to keep these videos down to about 15 minutes, so we'll hit the next topic here, and we'll see how long these videos take. But I'll try to split them up so that you can sit again and have them in small bite-sized pieces as we go along, and you're not having to sit through a whole lot of different stuff. If you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, and tell your friends about it so they can come along on the journey with us, and I'll talk to you next time.